All right, so welcome everybody. So we welcome Mai here today, Mai Shaheen. They are on day 51 of the Joint Global Hunger Strike. Their hunger is ours. And in a second, she will speak and tell a bit about SATYAM Homeland Community Center in Palestine, Israel, and also talk about the hunger strike. And after that, we are honored to welcome Professor Amos Goldberg, who will share with us about the rise of new anti-Semitism and how it shapes global discourse. And we invite for an honest conversation on memory, identity, and the space for ethical critique. And he'll be speaking until the top of the hour. And you can also write questions you have for him in the chat, and we'll pass them on to him. And there will be time afterwards, either for more discussion or also breakout rooms for sharing if there are things for you that are really alive and that you would like to have heard, would like to exchange, and bring yourselves and hear each other and think about how we can support each other, the hunger strike, and global liberation and freedom. And so that will all happen, and I think we will end at 5:30 the next hour. So, Mai, if you're ready, I would pass over to you.
Yes. Thank you, dear. Again, thank you, Naomi and Kaisa and everyone for joining. And I see Carla, my dear Habibti. I miss you. Honored to have you with us. Yeah, today I'm here in Berlin. I arrived 2 days ago. It's the 51 day of the Hungary strike, and it seems crazy sometimes in some moments to think that 51 days we have not eaten, me and David and others for less or more for less days, but still some are under 20, some are under 25. And to also say that so much care from all of the community and toward us, toward our emotions and physical health and being and what we intake. And it's still hard to think that with all of this care, we still feel the trembling of our body and see the bones showing and dizziness and shakenness. And I still yet wonder if we, with all of this care, choosing with all our privilege to be on this hunger strike, then how it is really for the people in Gaza. How is it really for the hostages? How is it really for the children? How is it really for the sick people? If this is how we are affected with the weight loss and with everything, then how is it for them? And for some reason, I cannot but share also about the last videos that's been going through media from people in Gaza. Skeletons, full bones, and the hostage. The last video of the hostage. And to be able to see it with real eyes, real in the reality, real like now, like right now, like a few hours far away from all of us. And to see how they are trying to show and to say and to ask, are we really seen? Is it really sensible that we are hungry, that we are being hungered? Is it really... And I ask the same, even though I am in hunger strike, I ask the same. How is it really that we now could see, and what can we more do? Then Hungary strike, then create communities, then open SATYAM homeland that call everyday Zoom. What can be done? Speakers from Jewish narrative, Israeli Jewish narrative, Palestinian narrative, European narrative, and American narrative. It's almost 51 days, and beside the Fridays and Saturdays, we've been coming together day after day after day after day, and a lot of you, we're so honored that we come to know you. So many of you come every day, not once the day stop, and some came 99%. And here in Germany, I am called to come and hold in VC and bring people hearts together and to try and walk through this pain and grieve with unity, with staying connected, to learn how do we use nonviolent dialogue and communication, into sitting and grieving and talking and acknowledging the starvation that is happening, the genocide, the occupation, the hostages, the oppression systems that continues to separate us and continues to make us each other's enemies and continue to ask us to choose who are we supporting, a Jewish, a Palestinian, a Jewish Israeli. And in SATYAM, and the reasons to why we opened SATYAM, Homeland, was to say no. We must not choose. We shall not choose. The only path to healing and to real liberation and to ending the starvation and the siege and the occupation and our children assuming that violence is the only way to their freedom is community, is us coming together no matter who we are and where we are from. United at one heart, saying to all of you, we stand up to all of Gaza, to the hostages, to the West Bank, to the Israelis, to the Jewish, to the Sudanese, to the Lebanese, to the Italian kids who are also starving, to the poverty in the United States where tax money are used into weapon industry, and same in Europe. For us to remind each other that this is a global liberation, that yes, maybe we started it from Israel, Palestine, but it's not only Israel, Palestine. It's all of us. It's all of our children. Right before I came to this Zoom, I read one of my Israelis, a friend, Facebook post about his last trip to Italy. And though he's a peace activist, it's not written in our forehead. So he was also criticized, and he was also met with violence, with people assuming that he has something to do just because he's an Israeli. And I am met the same in airports and on the borders where I am investigated with just because I'm a Palestinian, even though I'm a peace activist and everything is on media. And he's a peace activist and everything is on media. And this is why we started this, to call you, to invite you to become also the reminders with us, to tell people that there are people who are standing for everyone and naming everyone, and this is where I am standing. And they are everywhere, in Palestine and in Israel and in Berlin and in Sweden and in Germany and in Holland and in Poland. And here we are. This Hungary strike and SATYAM homeland is not a personal initiative. It is us trying to give this journey that we've got in our life to bring more awareness. For my daughter, for Aram, though she is worried and writing to me, Mommy, please eat. I do not want to lose you. And I tell her, I also do not want to lose you to oppression and occupation, and you passing the checkpoints and me thinking every morning, will you pass? Or will they also not distinguish you? That you are the daughter of May Shaheen, a peace activist, that your uncle married Lee Shim Tov, who is Jewish Israeli, and now they have children, because how would they know? It's not written on the forehead of my daughter. It's not written on our forehead who we are and what we choose to do. But it is written all over us that we are humans, and we stand up and we uprise from the West Bank as a woman, as a Muslim. I rise up for you and with you, and I hunger strike for Gaza and the hostages and Palestine and Israel, and I call you to do the same. And today, a week ago, 10 days ago, I was with Kaisan, David Shinati, and my daughter Aram, in Haifa and in Yafa and in Tel Aviv. And we joined the hunger strikes there. I crossed the checkpoints illegally, and I knew maybe I am risking and I could be arrested, and still we chose to go and to be there and to show solidarity and to call for a solidarity to come to the West Bank. And there I met Dr. Amos Goldberg for the first time personally, and I was very affected by him beforehand. And in there in Yafa, he spoke. He stood and he spoke, and I was again touched and moved. And I wanted to bring him to you as well, to gift to all of us another gift of another voice that will remind us and give us strength and power on how do we continue. For him to share with us how do we also hold, but yet name the truth and talk about it and allow it in our space with the intentions of healing and meeting for a global, real, true liberation. That will start from us Palestinians and Israelis, inshallah, to the rest of you. And it is of my deep honor, Dr. Amos, my dear, that you said yes to us immediately when we asked that you came, and you said, yes, I stand up and I will come and I will speak. It's an honor. We welcome you. Very glad to hear you today again. Very blessed, though, with all of the hard times we are going through. This is the most best nutrition to me as I am hungering, to David and to all the others who are hungering and who are holding us in our hunger, to everyone that is globally with us. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, dear, and welcome. It's with you. Thank you. Thank you all.
So now I speak.
Yes, now you speak.
Okay, thank you very, very much, Mai, for your introduction, not of me, of your worldview or your. It's not a view; it's an existential positioning in the world, which is so not only touching but so essential and so lacking in the place where we come from, and it's a different tone, it's a different kind of it's a different speech that might bring some, I don't know, maybe seeds to the future of solution in our permanent piece of land, where today, as we know, a genocide is taking place. I first want to say thank you to you, Mai, and David, whom I met in Jaffa in our 3 days symbolic hunger strike that was um, organized by the 1948 the Palestinians inside Israel with Israel or leadership, to which many Jews joined in. And there I met Mai and listened to her and to a different speech, but as moving, as touching as this one. And she asked me um, to talk on something, and it will be a little bit more academic. So before I start, of course, I would say that not only that I don't know what's the word here, if admire or um, appreciate or care for all those who are on strike, are in one way or another for 20 or 50 or 3 or only partial strike or whatever way of solidarity with the Palestinians in Gaza and against the war, which is so harmful to everybody and so lethal and so sadistic. And we are maybe again this kind of gestures that express humanity, which we so much lack in this genocide. At least now I mostly speak for the Israeli part because I know the Israeli society. And there we are, we've become a very, grosso modo, an inhuman society. And the message that you, all of you here, and my particularly in what you said, convey is the seed, the only way for any kind of future. So I suggested I will talk on something, and as I said, it will be a little bit academic. It's not, it's less emotional, but I think still very urgent about the conflation of anti-Semitism and critique of Israel and critique or anti-Zionism, which has become a very effective tool to suppress almost any essential and needed critique of the genocide, but not only of the genocide in Gaza, but also Israeli policies and Zionism as it per se all over the world. I go every 2 weeks or every other week to the West Bank, and the situation there is not as bad as Gaza, but is also very, very bad. And as a Israeli philosopher who now works in America said, this allegation of anti-Semitism is a kind of an iron dome, discursive iron dome against against critique of Israel. You have to be so careful to choose your words and your symbols and everything. In particularly in Germany, there are some of you, including my, who are now in Germany, and now also in America and United States, in the crackdown not only on the encampment but also on the universities themselves, as the recent deal they struck with quote unquote, the administration struck with Columbia University, which will actually devaluate the university from its values. So this anti-Semitism is allegation is one of the most suppressive and oppressive tools against this human protest against the killing. Now, this is not to say that anti-Semitism does not exist. Of course, it exists. This is not the same as saying that it is not. You cannot also you can never find it on the left. You can find it on the left and the radical left, but and we will touch um, be, far beyond that. This has become an uh, overall um, shielding mechanism to enable Israel continue with its apartheid and now genocide in Gaza. So I will try now to sketch very briefly how we reached this point. And I will say a few words about anti-Semitism, and I will be a little bit general, and then we'll focus on the current document, which functions as the most efficient, quote unquote, in blocking a critique. So first of all, we have to acknowledge that this word, since it penetrated political discourse in Germany at the 1870s, in the last third of the 19th century, by Wilhelm Marr, there was not there was never any consensus, including in among Jews, of what it really means. Is it a feeling? Is it a politics? Is it based on religion, or is it based on economic? When can you identify it, and when it is legitimate critique, even to Jews? And what are the connections between this to racism and to other forms of bigotry? All those questions were asked immediately as it was inserted into political discourse, and there was never actually a consensus, never among Jews and non-Jews. To the extent that one of the leading scholars of anti-Semitism, who lives with us, David Engel, he said we have to drop this word altogether because it does not clarify. It obscures more than it clarifies, because you can think of it like big categories. What do we have in common between the gas chambers in Auschwitz and some stupid joke on Jews someone says on the subway? Those are completely different phenomena. They are completely different uh, contexts. They are so different from each other. Putting them all in one basket obscures. We don't understand the phenomena, not intellectually and not politically, to fight it. So he said in my research, and he's really one of the most eminent Holocaust, Jewish history, and a history of anti-Semitism scholars, and he said, I just don't use it. I try to describe whenever I need to encounter it. I just try to describe the occurrences. I am not labeling it as anti-Semitism because it obscures, as I said, more than it explains. Now, I will Israel, but since now until the Holocaust and a little bit after, anti-Semitism was basically a legitimate part of political discourse in Europe. After the Holocaust, it became a kind of taboo. And Israel has used it since day one, accusing its enemies and their supporters of being Nazis or anti-Semites. And I will give you one example. In 1954, just 6 years after the establishment of the State of Israel, that was really many years ago, Israel planted some espionage cells in in Egypt, and they targeted terroristically. They inserted some bombs in some Western installations, and that was done in order to create some rift between um, England and Western powers and Egypt, which was also some in between, some kind of in between sovereignty, and they wanted to put to interfere in this relationship. Now, these cells were caught by the Egyptians, and they were tried, and some committed suicide, some died in the cell, but probably because of torture, and some were hanged because they were traitors. The Israeli media immediately said, "Oh my God, they didn't believe the accusations because Israel it was under heavy censorship." And the atmosphere and the major message of Israeli media already in 1954 was, oh my God, this is anti Semitism. Eventually, it was a big issue in Israeli politics, a government almost, I mean, it was a big, till this day, it's a big issue. It's called the Lavon affair or the failure. And but the media covered it as an anti-Semitic incident because it was under censorship and nobody really knew what happened. But the immediate reaction was, if they accuse us of that, it's some kind of. But it became it is it's an anti-Semitic. It's anti-Semitism now. But that was in 1954. It was not a policy. It was occasion. Since the 1970s, gradually, Israel has facilitated Holocaust memory and the fight against anti Semitism in order to shield itself from criticism and to base its status, international status, because since it actually started in the late 60s after the 1967 war and the occupation. It was more and more difficult to explain or excuse or to justify the occupation, and Israel found itself isolated, particularly in the 70s. You remember the 1973 war, and then there was a oil embargo over the West, and in 1975, which I will soon come back to, there was um, a UN resolution that compared Zionism to racism, and Israel found itself in a defensive point, and it recruited more and more this anti-Semitic trope and Holocaust in order to justify the occupation, justify its refusal for peace, and it's to somehow break the isolation of. Now, this intensified in the 1990s, very much intensified, because for reasons not only connected to Israel, or I would say mainly not connected to Israel, more it has to do more with generational change in Europe itself and major political changes in the world after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the establishment of the EU, the unification of Germany. The West, so to say, was looking, and this feeling of the end of history, as Fukuyama said it, with only one superpower in the world at that time, of United States. The West, or the global North, was looking for a new myth after the old one, myth in the sense of a organizing story, some kind of a organizing story. They looked for a new one because the old one, vis-a-vis the Soviet Union, was not relevant anymore. And in a way, the world that was established in the 1990s leaned back on the issue of human rights, and it was supported by the, the story of the Holocaust. So we learn the Holocaust, we remember, because, okay, of course, because of its magnitude, it's indeed a European story. It's not just a Jewish or German story. It's a universal story because of its cruelty, because of the magnitude of the death machines and the destruction, and it's really very radical genocide that took place on the soil of Europe, and that was somehow transformed into a foundational narrative to create a new Western idea to support the ethics of human rights. And so the question, why do we have to learn and remember and commemorate and establish memorials and museums and institutions about the Holocaust? Because we learn from it. The lesson from the Holocaust is to be more democratic, to be less radical politically, not and to uphold human rights. That was the message. At the same time, another narrative, global narrative, took shape and immigrated from the global south to the universities, first in America and then to Europe, and that was the post-colonial, uh, which focused not on the crimes that happen on European soil, mostly except, but on the crimes that Europeans committed outside of Europe for centuries. And it's not only its death toll, but its shaping of nations and destruction of nations and shaping world history on the back, I would say, of non-European nations. This story that also became very global was much more critical of liberal democracies because whereas the Holocaust and anti-Semitism narrative, which I just described very quickly, said, okay, the Nazis were the bad guys, but we are the good guys because we learned our lessons from the bad guys, the post-colonial and anti-colonial and race theory and all which developed from that said, no, no, no. Liberal democracies are just as criminal as everybody else because the United States is emerged with racism and colonial and imperial and slavery and racism on its own. Where is the indigenous population? Where did they go? Weren't they annihilated? And the same from Great Britain and France and actually all Europe and Belgium and Dutch and Holland, all big European nations were so much involved in this hundreds of years of colonization that really destructed societies and killed so many people around the world, including many genocides. So those two global narratives took shape during the 1990s and they entangled with each other, sometimes supporting, sometimes. But on the issue of Israel Palestine, they clashed head on because, according to this anti-Semitism Holocaust narrative, global narrative, Israel was seen as the answer to the issue, to the centuries long anti Semitism and to the Holocaust. It was the place where Holocaust survivors could rehabilitate themselves, earn their dignity and their honor. While, according to the colonial or post colonial, Israel was seen as a settler colonial state, very criminal, just all other European states. And those two narratives clashed head on the issue of Israel and Palestine since the 90s. A turning point was in 2000, September 2001, in the UN held a anti-racism convention, the convention against racism in Durban, South Africa, in September 2001. That was 1 year after the second Intifada, which was very violent. And Israel was again seen as the, for the good reasons, for a thug. Um, um, and it, in and it was in South Africa where just 19 apartheid ended in 1994. So in this Israel took center place, and there was huge criticism against Israel that was somehow blocked in the main conference by America and other European countries. At the same time, there was another under the auspice of this convention, there was also another assembly of human rights organizations from all over the world. And there, United States could not help Israel, and the critique against Israel was very, very harsh there, and that was on the highest international stage. Uh, those human rights organizations declared Israel as apartheid state, as committing acts of genocide, as violating all humanitarian international law, and it also called for a complete um, boycott against Israel to force her to to um, give justice to the Palestinians. Now, that was a shock for many Israelis and Jews around the world, and eventually other supporters of Israel, because it was the first time that this anti-colonial narrative won the stage on the highest international level. And Israel's response to it since 2001 was to increase as much as it can labeling such critique as anti-Semitic, not trying to think, well, maybe there is some truth in it because the occupation endures, the settlement endures, the Nakba happened and we don't even come to terms with it. More than 500 villages were destroyed. There was an ethnic cleansing during the 1948. We don't come to terms with it. But when someone puts someone puts um, a mirror in front of our face, we will call it anti-Semitic. And since the early 2000s, there was an huge intensification to label um, uh, any critique of Israel as as and of Zionism, because according to this narrative, which personally I would say I mean it's it's not a narrative. There are many people saying many things. I'm kind of generalizing. Many people um, saw the root in Zionism itself as actually Palestinian and Arab intellectuals did so. They didn't have to wait for the post-colonial turn in Europe. They knew it right from the beginning, or at least after the Balfour Declaration in the 1920s, after the Mandate. And many saw it as an imperialist project. Now, this is not for, I will jump a little bit. This is not to say that Zionism did not emerge from a real Jewish problem in Europe of anti-Semitism and Holocaust, but it is just to say that it shaped itself in its uh, um, political structures in a very racist way that are not egalitarian in whatsoever. That is like in settler colonial project, they disperse the indigenous population and they take over the land, and actually there is some kind of eliminatory element in it that we can follow also in Zionism. That was a harsh, but I think more than relevant, actually accurate critique of Zionism as a political ideology. We can think of other ways to organize political structures and political life between Jews and Palestinians in Palestine, Israel, rather than according to this Zionist idea. So it is so that the 2000 in the 2000 emerged this reaction of Israel and its supporters to label such kind of critique as anti-Semitic. And as time went on, and it was more and more difficult to within um, liberal in democratic discourse to explain, to justify the occupation, certainly the occupation, and the injustices, and the discrimination, and the racism, and inside Israel, and particularly in the West Bank in Gaza, and even after and the siege. So the more Israel and its supporters um, uh, were it was more the more it is, more difficult it was to justify, they leaned more to the narrative of anti-Semitism. Now, on the other hand, for Europe, for its own um, causes, anti-Semitism became kind of a symbol of fighting racism, of being on the good side, of upholding human rights, and and um, and this also now, this made Europe, actually, Europe and the United States, even if they supported the idea of human rights, when it came to Israel, it was something else. It was a kind of a completely different approach. Now, you have also to remember that 5 days after the Durban conference against racism was closed, the 9/11 happened and the whole world shifted to the right. Then we have like 20 years of many other occurrences that shifted to the right. And this narrative of exceptionalizing anti Semitism from racism won a lot of support. and then in 2016, it reached a peak when an organization which was formed initially in 2000 and in 1998, which is called the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, they adopted a, an, a, a definition of anti-Semitism in order to fight anti-Semitism. But guess what? This definition focuses mainly on Israel-related anti-Semitism and not on major anti-Semitism of Jewish hatred as it was formed in the modern age, in religious, its religious roots in Christianity, and so you see a complete shift from talking about anti-Semitism in terms of Jews as a minority discriminated or hated or suffering violence within the majority society in Europe, either from religious or cultural or political or economic reasons, to an anti-Semitism that focuses on the nation state with a majority that oppresses the minority, or not the minority, oppresses its non-Jewish citizens and subject under its occupation. And this is a major shift. And I want now, and they reorganize, completely redefine what is anti-Semitism in a completely different way. And I want to now to share with you a screen, and we will read some of those clauses that focus and to show how twisted they are, how unfair they are, how dishonest they are in imagining in defining anti-Semitism in a way that will shield criticism from Israel. Now, I want to add a caveat. It is not that you cannot have critique of Israel and Zionism, which is not motivated by anti-Semitism. And as I said, sometimes also critique of anti-Semitic critique of Israel and Zionism uses anti-Semitic images. You can see here this is the 2016 IHRA non-legally binding working definition of anti-Semitism. Like this non-legally binding became very legally binding in many places over the world. Now, there is a very vague, we will not go into it, a very vague and I would dare say stupid definition, core definition. Anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred, maybe not. I mean, it's a very, but not so harmful. Now let's go to some of the but then they come with 11 examples to explain how does this play out. Now, you can see already in the beginning that criticism of Israel is already in the second sentence. So you see it's completely oriented towards Israel. Now let's see, for example, so then we have 11 examples of what could be, maybe anti-Semitism, and 7 of them are Israeli related, as if anti-Semitism is all about Israel. It's mainly about Israel. For example, accusing, denying, I'm now here, I'm now reading this one, the 7th one. Denying the Jewish people the right to self-determination, e.g., by claiming that the existence of the State of Israel is a racist endeavor. But this is exactly the Palestinian national uh, um, narrative, that Israel was born on the ruins of the Palestinians, and it's racist because it um, structurally discriminates against them, because there are dozens of laws that prefer Jews over Arabs, and um, Zionism is an ethnic national ideology, and Israel is an ethnic national state, particularly after 2018. when the nation state law was, I would say, explicitly legislated it. So why can't we say that Israel is a racist state, like this critique is leveled at America, at Germany, at almost every country, including Arab countries, are a target of this kind of critique. Only Israel is shielded because that would be considered anti-Semitism. Now, denying the Jewish people the right to self-determination, why is that anti-Semitism? While Israel is denying the Palestinian as a policy for decades their own right for self-determination. How now? Even okay, I will not go into it. So it's a kind of a complete bias to say you can talk about Israel in a completely different way that you can talk on every other nation and any other state, but and particularly about the Palestinians. You can say whatever you want on the Palestinians. You can say they are racist. You can say they are fundamentalists. You can say whatever you want. But to say that the Israeli state is racist as a settler colonial state, which many scholars and many Palestinians hold this view, why is it anti-Semitic? Why to say why why saying Israel the, um, the, denying the Jewish people the right to self-determination? Well, it's not that abstract. Well, some deny the Jews their self-determination in Israel Palestine because of the kind of state that we created. Why denying that while Israel's policy is particularly that denying the Palestinians their self-determination? You see, kind of a bias. Then let's see, applying double standards by requiring, I'm reading now this one, requiring it of a behavior not expected or demanded any other democratic nation. Is there a scale that you, first of all, it assumes Israel is a democracy, while Israel controls half of the population it controls is either devoid um, of rights or has only partial rights. Now, is there a scale? Now, before I start to criticize, this double standard was used so many times to label critiques as anti-Semitic because why do you say this? What did you say? Why did you say a word on Syria? Why don't you say a word on China? Why don't you say a word on America? Why don't you say you have to first accuse all the world and cover yourself before you even start talking about Israel Palestine? Whereas this itself is a double standard because no other nation has such a document that shields it from critique with such a whataboutism that becomes anti-Semitism. Now let's remember that the Palestinians don't have such a document that say how to that somehow all regulates how to talk about what is not how to talk correctly without Islamophobia or anti-Arab or anti-Palestinian racism. And then you have using symbols and images associated or drawing comparison of contemporary Israel policy to that of the Nazis. Well, again, Israel is accusing from day one. Israel is accusing, and I just gave an example from 1954 when the Egyptians were accused of being conducting Nazi anti-Semitic trials. Eventually, as I said, they were not. This was a completely false accusation because there were espionage cells that they were trying, but everybody accuses everybody with this metaphor. I will give you one example and then we will finish. In 2022, is Anthony Blinken, that was not long ago, February 2022, is Anthony Blinken came to the Holocaust Museum in Washington and said this is not only a place of memory, this is also a place of responsibility. And therefore, I came here to declare that the United States acknowledges the Myanmar attack against the Rohingya in the Rakhine state in Myanmar as a genocide. He made a comparison. He made the analogies. He made the association. Everybody does it. This is why we learned about the Holocaust. Israel is accusing the Palestinians throughout its existence, and now many times over. It's like part and parcel, integral part of Israeli political discourse to accuse Yasser Arafat, to accuse the Palestinians, to accuse everybody as being Nazi. But the Palestinians, even if it is well based and documented, they cannot use this major global analogy in order to present their own suffering, their own plea um, for for rights and for justice. Those are only three examples how this document became such a powerful tool of double standard that there are completely different discursive rules um, to talk about Israel when rather than any other state, particularly about the Palestinians. And this has, as you might have encountered in Germany, in United States, this and its spirit are the major tool to crack down on the encampments, to crack down. Now, I'm not saying there were incidents of real anti-Semitism even in encampments, but generally speaking, those were not illegitimate, essential protests against genocide. And they cracked down on them, and they cracked down on the universities and their curricula through this mechanism. And they cracked down on German protesters, and they cracked down on in France and in the United States with this document and its spirit, which actually conflates critique of Israel and critique of Zionism and anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, which are two completely different things. And with this, I will I will end because since Zionism was established, was in the late 19th century, its critique and objection came with it in Jewish history. And if you read today someone like Hannah Arendt, she would be considered in Germany anti-Semitic, completely anti-Semitic. If you read some of the religious opposition to Zionism, since its inception till this day, it will be considered anti-Semitic. If you read the Bund, which was a diasporic nationalist um, Marxist movement, very big in East Europe. And in the 20s, they were criticizing Zionism very harshly. It would be considered anti Semitic. And this is exactly what they do about Jewish Voice for Peace, for example, in Germany, or Yiddish Stimme in Germany. They label it as anti Semitic, even though they act within Jewish traditions. And this made one of the uh, a very interesting article published recently by two international Israeli Jewish lawyers who say, hey, you are now, you, America, you, Germany, you, UK, you determine to me how to practice my Judaism. This is a discrimination against me because not only that you suppress free speech, not only that you that you crack down on essential protest against genocide. Not only that you position yourself on the wrong side of history and let those Gazans die and be killed. You're also forcing me who identify my Jewishness, practice my Jewishness by opposing Zionism or by opposing Israel policies, by supporting the Palestinian cause by fighting for some kind of egalitarian equal rights, maybe beyond Zionism solution. You say I cannot practice my Judaism in this way. Well, you discriminate against me because this is not only my just cause. This is how I practice and enact my very Jewish values. And I think this kind of critique comes not only from, again, from within Jewish society and within Jewish communities and Israeli communities. All in all, there were some alternatives to this definition. There are other definitions that were created. I was part of an endeavor which is called the Jerusalem Declaration of Antisemitism to try to define in a more careful way the distinction and the overlaps between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism and critique of Israel. You can find it, Jerusalem. There's also the Nexus, and there is also the New Jersey, which is very progressive. I think New Jersey definition of Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, which are so much entangled. I just want to say that there are two strategies to combat this. Some say, no, we should not, for example, from the river to the sea. It's not anti-Semitic. I also think I wrote some articles about it. It's not anti-Semitic. Should we change our slogan because they falsely accuse us for anti-Semitism? We have to stick to our and educate ourselves where anti-Semitism really exists, not, God forbid, fall into those pits, but stick to our just cause and not bow down in front of this suppressive mechanism. And some say, no, instead of saying from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, we will say from the river to the sea, everybody should be free. And this is a kind of a variation of the same slogan, but nobody can. I mean, in Germany, this is also was criminalized because they are, some of you are German, they are completely out of their mind in this sense. But um, this is a different strategy, and there are so many in between strategies how to combat that, and how to really not to allow ourselves to be identified or as anti-Semitic, because if I go back to what Mai said just at the beginning of this session, we have to keep our humanity, certainly vis-a-vis Gaza and the Palestinians, but also vis-a-vis anti-Semitism, and educate ourselves how to protest in the most um, efficient and determined way, but without uh, somehow uh, falling into any anti-Semitic rhetoric um, or images. I will stop here.
Thank you, Dr. Amos. There is a few questions on the chat. Maybe I will read them to you together and you answer them. And then if we have time, we will still do the breakout rooms for everyone to bring themselves. So there was a question, how does the professor explains the continued unconditional support of the US for Israel? Also, what is your approach to encampments hosting talks from Hamas affiliated people as speakers? Should they be allowed or disallowed to host virtual talks with them? So yes, and also I read you Ameta. She wrote, "May I speak?" Which, to be honest, is an emotional.
May I answer this question first?
Yes.
Look, I am not an American, so I don't know what the American laws say, and so I don't want to, and I don't want to. I think I don't know what it means to be Hamas oriented or not. It's not. It's not a matter of orientation. It's a matter of what you say. Now, the Hamas first how do you say it in English? The covenant, like the Hamas basic document, was certainly anti-Semitic from 1988. It was certainly anti-Semitic. It alluded to elders of Zionism. It was very. But in 2017 they changed it, and you don't find any of that anymore. Now I'm not now. I don't know what is Hamas oriented. You have to listen to what if they say, for example, that the 7th of October was not anti-Semitic. Don't get me wrong. In my opinion, it was a crime. It was heinous crime to kill 800 citizens, even if you consider them settler colonial. We can talk about that. The distinction between citizens and non-combatants has to be kept wherever. So but if you explain it and you say there was a context, it was not up to annihilate Jews, it was not to annihilate the Israel as a state. It was, as the Hamas explained many times over, to jeopardize the Abraham Accord that aimed to wipe them off the political table. And because of the Israelis slowly occupying Al-Aqsa. And this is, I think, a legitimate claim that is not anti-Semitic. You can debate it or not, but it's not. Yes, the context of as heinous as the 7th of October was, the context, there is a context of it, and it's apartheid, and it's siege, and it's Nakba. You know, we were sitting in Jaffa. Many of those we were sitting in hunger strike. Their relatives are in Jaffa because they were expelled during 1948, and some were expelled thereafter in 1950, 1953, and so there is context. If someone says, I don't care if he's from Hamas, he aligns himself with Hamas, with Fatah, with the Jewish Voice for Peace, with Israel, with whoever, we have to listen to what people say and listen. Now, I'm not, of course, not a Hamas supporter. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not legitimizing or delegitimizing. I'm not talking about Hamas because for me, it's not the issue. The issue is what people say. Now, if they align themselves explicitly with the Hamas as a movement, it's not my issue. I mean, this is I don't know. Those are the encampments have to decide what are they speaking, and I don't know. I don't know what are the laws in it there because they are declared as a terrorist organization. But I'm not talking about the organization. I'm talking about the content, and I don't. Again, I think Hamas has done very big crimes and before and during and the October 7th. But the question is what is the people in the encampment talk about? If they talk about context, if they talk about occupation, if they talk about egalitarian solution, one state, two state, confederation, if they talk about a context, if they talk about the life in Gaza, if they talk about internal Palestinian politics in which Hamas is part and parcel of, I think it's a legitimate talk, even if you can debate it. I'm not to tell the Palestinians how to run their politics. I'm not in a position to talk, certainly not today, to say that. I'm in no position whatsoever to tell them how to run their politics.
Thank you, Dr. Amos, really for such enriching and also understanding. It's a hard conversation as well, acknowledging everything that you also brought and how important it is to speak also of history and to name history in order to help us understand more deeply what is truly also happening and how do we go with it.
Can I add that if someone wants to throw all the Jews in Palestine to the sea, I think this is illegitimate. This is a kind of illegitimate talk. If they want to, I mean, this is to annihilate all Israelis. This is an illegitimate talk. If those kind of things are not illegitimate, to the same extent that this horrifying discourse about destroying completely Gaza is illegitimate, though we hear it all over. Um, so, I mean, we have to talk about them as in parallel. So, of course, such kind of a solution of which is violent against Jews in Palestine, Israel, is illegitimate. But it is illegitimate just as well to talk on such solutions to the Palestinians, as we hear all those Smotrich and Ben Gvir and Netanyahu talk all the time. So I think this inequality is already infused, as we saw, inscribed in the IHRA definition, that there's a certain talk that we have to respect about Israel as a Jewish state, and there's a completely different set of rules about the Palestinians. So don't get me wrong, I am against, yes, there are limits to this kind of discourse, but they have to be on both sides.
Thank you, Dr. Amos. I think just because also of time, and I see that there is another question, and I'm also wishing to give Amita a few minutes, like a minute to share. So I think today, if you all agree, we will not go out to the breakout rooms. We will stay together to take the next questions and to listen to 2, 3 of your voices before we close. Do we agree? Is there anyone that wishes for this? Yeah, okay. So there is another question from Dan. What is the difference between combatants and civilians in Israel as the age of mandatory reserve service increased to 50 last year? Yeah, it's
Think there must be, it's according to humanitarian international law and to all, that there is a difference between combatants, and even when I am at home and I'm with my family and I'm not wearing uniform and I'm not fighting, I'm a civilian, even if there's mandatory reserve. Those distinctions have to be kept in the same way that someone who was, I mean, in the Hamas in the 19, I don't know, 10 years ago, and now he is with his family, he's not a legitimate target. This, I think, in our age, where people can inflict so much harm and damage and 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 death on civilians, this has to be, in my opinion, this distinction, which again you hear it also from Francesca Albanese, you hear it from this distinction has to be kept, and there is no, again, in my opinion, there is no legitimacy and no justification to kill 800 civilians, even if some of them were in the army or will be called to reserve in 2 months, or as long as they are civilians. If they are fighting and they hold gun or they are in the army, then according to the war rules, they are a legitimate target. But this has to hold on both sides. This has to hold on both sides. And I think one crime does not legitimate the other crime and vice versa. So I see the 7th of October as a crime, as a very, and I can tell you also, it's very personal. I knew people were, you don't take hostage a 1-year toddler who dies in captivity. Those are things that I think are criminal, even if this toddler will grow up to be a soldier. This is a really twisted way to think about it. In the same way to talk about we kill the Palestinians, as we hear so much, because they will grow up to be terrorists. Those distinctions, and I will say more than that. It's not only that holding the distinctions; it's the very essence of distinctions that we have to keep. Because if you hold an ideology that does not make distinctions and has no limits on power and on killing, you end up very, very bad. And this we see, I think, now I will not talk about the Palestinian society because I'm not an expert and I don't know it. But in Israeli society is really going down this slope of erasing all distinctions, saying no, there are no innocent people in Gaza, and we see the genocidal outcome. So I really think that beyond the issue of this legal distinctions, the very essence, the very principle of distinctions, that there are limits. You limit yourself in your violence is very, very important. And I think it holds also on both sides, not on Israeli, but also for the Hamas.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really, we wish to continue this conversation, so we invite you to raise your hand if you wish to bring yourself, Amita dear. Please, you
I
are
would just add
invited.
that
Yes.
when we don't make distinctions, and this is what you talked about at the beginning, don't make distinctions, and this is even if you are the oppressed, even if you are the colonized, not even you are the oppressed, you are the colonized, of course. But if you and actually Hamas does make distinction. It did. It started in 1994. I mean, it deteriorated. Uh, make not making distinctions is in a way losing your humanity, and this is what really Mai said at the beginning. I think we do want to not to in this protest and in this solidarity and in this and caring also about the hostages and caring about we want to 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 preserve our humanity, which is essentially, I would say, built on distinctions. Not everybody is always guilty.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Amos. We will just take two voices or three voices that really wishes to come, whether you have a question or you have something to share. We will start with Amita. And if someone else, please just raise your hand so we know to invite you after Amita. So, yeah, yes, Amita,
Thank
dear.
you. Thank you very much. Well, first, I just want to almost thank you, thank you for bringing him. And you said a lot, and it was very clear and organized. And I just want to say that having this kind of hearing this in this space, this is like such a loving, peaceful, like space where there's so much like focus on that we're all human and not demonizing that, like it's much easier to hear this talk in this space than in other spaces that I've been in. So I just want to say that. Um, and I wish we could spend another several hours on this.
Mhm.
um, I will say that I read this whole statement, and the 3 points that you brought, Amos, that are problematic in the statement, I agree with you. And the other 8 points I looked, they were actually, I felt, accurate or needed more fleshing out. So it's not like a black and white thing, but you're right that when it says you can't say anything against Israel because it's anti-Semitic, like, this is totally it's not okay that it prevents legitimate critique. But I will say that my feeling about the way the world views this prior to October 7th, I mean, it's been going on for a long time, the occupation and the oppression and the siege. But there is a part of me as a Jew, and as a Jew with very deep connections in Israel. I mean, I'm a dual citizen. I lived there for 18 years. I always want to go back. There is a part of me that, like, in this forum, I can hear things from people and it's all okay. But the fact that so many people on university campuses that are not Jews, are not Palestinians, are not Germans, because I feel Germans are the other part of the triangle that have as much of a, it's like Germans, Jews, and Palestinians all are very much a part of this thing. But when so many other people rush to attack Israel I mean, right now, of course, but for decades, there is a part of me that feels, like there's something not kosher here. Like, so, which is not to deny Israel's crimes, but there's something that feels not kosher in the way so many people are rushing to attack Israel for decades, from the beginning, even. Definitely since 67, which, okay, since 67, we had the occupation. So there's good reason to criticize. But anyway, there's just a feeling I have with some people like, why is this particular thing the thing? And if you're engaged because you want to find a way for Israelis, Jews, and Palestinians to live from the river to the sea freely together, this, which is what this group is about, is very different than a lot of what I hear. When I just like, for an example, when I went to see No Other Land on the university campus here in Massachusetts, and it's devastating. And it wasn't anything new for me because I've been to Masafer, but still, like, it's so, it makes me sick. I mean, really, I was shaking. And when I got up to say that, and when there was time for comments, and I said, there's no defense, there's no justification, it's terrible. And the only thing that gives me hope is that there are still groups like Combatants for Peace and Omdim B'Yachad, and then the woman who was running the program said, beware of both sidesism. Like, in response to me, like the fact that I even should suggest that there's any Israelis who are working together with Palestinians, it's like, it's that sort of thing. Like, you have no place here. So I said a lot. I think you get where I'm coming from. I think there is definitely anti-Semitism. It gets mixed in, and it's very hard to disentangle it. And it really depends on the person. You can be very anti-Zionist and not at all anti-Semitic. And as you did say, sometimes they go together.
Thank you.
Can
Thank
I
you.
respond or
Yeah, please.
um, you know I don't know how to this unpack what like a lot of what you said, and some of it I agree with you. I first want to say that this without the anti-Semitism, those are the things you would hear from also apartheid South Africa, because in the 80s it was not the worst crisis in the world, not even in Africa. But it somehow we can explain why, and I think also in the case of Israel Palestine, it became a symbol for something. I think part of it is the issue of it's the last colonial, or it is perceived. I think it's not only perceived; it's the last colonial enterprise which was not politically decolonized after South Africa and after some kind of Ireland and because of that and because of other reasons that the entanglement of Jewish and Christian history throughout the ages, it became symbolic. Before that, there was a lot of in the 1990s. It was other like the former Yugoslavia caught the attentions of and Ukraine caught the attention before Israel. And I would really, I mean, it's so bad. The situation is so bad. I would not, and we have to encourage people that they stand against genocide, stand against complicity. They want to stop this massacre. Well, in my, I wrote with my friend and colleague Bashir Bashir. We wrote several. We co-edited several books. It's called one of them in English. It's called The Holocaust and the Nakba: A New Grammar of Trauma of History, where we try to articulate really a shared kind of memory of taking responsibility without and ending up with a political idea of what Bashir calls egalitarian binationalism, with complete equal rights to all, which now does not exist. between the river and the sea, there are two, like a little bit 7.4 million Palestinians, 7.3 million Jewish Israelis, and some have rights, some don't have rights. And this is something that the world does not, people of conscience do not want to agree. And we have to be happy that people support this cause, the fight against it, and try to. Now, what happened in? I mean, I was in Colombia a little bit. I guess some. This is kind of discussions that have to take place. I think both sidism is a really it again becomes kind of a problem that we want to draw symmetry when there is asymmetry in many ways, and things that maybe were and Israel from its very beginning expelled the Palestinians in order to gain. I mean, the history is very complicated, but the fact is that it started with the destruction of a Palestinian civilization in Palestine by destroying more than 500 um, villages and by expelling some 750,000. My friend Alon, I mean, you can read it everywhere. Those are well-known facts. So there is something I think structural settler in Israel that has to be changed. It could be maybe called Israel, but it has to change some kind of constitutionally in order to be to grant equal rights to all. And I think this is a legitimate critique. Now, what actually happened? When do you hear? I understand you. I understand you because sometimes you cannot. And I don't think we need those anti-Semitism definition and a kind of a legal tool. We have to create really spaces of genuine dialogue in order from within the encampments when though these causes justified, not justified, super essential justified causes like stopping the genocide and granting the Palestinians their rights are articulated in a way that sympathizers like you who are in Masaf Yatta feel uncomfortable and they could have been articulated otherwise. So this is I think a tightrope we have to educate ourselves, but from within, from acknowledging the wrongdoing, from acknowledging the crimes, from acknowledging taking responsibility for the genocide. Then we can talk about other sensitivities. This is my take on it, and I admit that I'm in Israel. We have okay, thank goodness we have our own problems. Um, I can't give advice to you in the United States how to conduct those encampments. And I can understand that some, but also again, we have to distinguish between anti-Semitism and inconvenience. Some kind of rhetoric does not put you on the spot, and it's not, you don't want to be put on the spot. And I know many Russians that felt very bad in the way a critique against Russia was. Doesn't make it necessarily anti-Semitic. This may be an inconvenient or it may sometimes inappropriate speech. It's not immediately anti-Semitic. So those distinctions, those conversations have to take place, I think. And well, there are clear anti-Semitic. Yes, it has to be discussed, and it has to be. I think in most cases that I encounter, some of this. I will give you one example, and that was Francesca Albanese once said the Jewish lobby instead of the Israeli or pro-Israeli lobby. And they put her on the spot and she regretted it and she said, okay, now I'm educated. I wasn't aware of this difference. Many times people say things that and they are willing to be educated. I think
Thank,
yeah, okay.
thank you, Dr. Ahmed, just for the sake also of time, wishing to thank you
Well,
with We fully agree that it's really crucial, especially in such times of such pain that is happening and grief, and people choosing strategies, to defend ourselves as well. It's really crucial for us to remember that this is one of the strengths that nonviolent dialogue actually gives to us. How do we bring hard conversation and acknowledge, but yet still honor and hold each other's dignity and each other's absolute equal needs to justice and freedom and belonging? And that never again, the learning of never again from the Holocaust is never again on Palestinians and Jewish Israelis and other people, and to always hold this truth within us in every discussion. And it is the hope that we are always met with this conversation for the oppressed not to turn into the oppressor, also for us as Palestinians to not to turn into the oppressors by people naming us as now the only people that deserves to be free, or by guilt and shame of what the way also the world responded to the Holocaust. So deeply
Completely
appreciated.
agree with you for saying it much better than I am.
No,
And I
no,
don't,
thank you.
I think Jews who feel uncomfortable from within, who support the cause. I'm
Yeah,
not talking those who defend the genocide.
yeah,
This is a completely different thing.
exactly.
Those who want to stop the genocide, to grant,
Yeah,
to reach an equal, an agreement of equal rights for all. For those who oppose the ethnic cleansing and the violence in the West Bank, now they have to be incorporated into this discussion, not to be excluded
ex-
from because of uh, inappropriate talk within those encampments. But this is a process. This is a process, and it's not a very easy process.
yeah. This is why it's really, really important to have you here for such a conversation, to start normalizing these conversations in order for us to really deeply understand how do we then we take this understanding and clarity into true freedom and justice for everyone. Mu'in, dear, I wish to invite you, Habibi. Ahlan wa sahlan, Mu'in. You wish to open your mic. Mu'in is from Gaza. He was with us also previously, and now he's in Balm Village in France. His sister is also a therapist in Gaza, and we previously listened to them. I also encourage you to go to our YouTube and to listen to them again. Mu'in, Habibi, welcome, please. And just for the time's sake, I'm very aware that it's already 5 minutes past. So we'll just listen to mine for 2 minutes. And we remind you that all of the links were already shared. We will share them again now for you to follow us, for you to join the groups. Also, if you wish to support the hunger strike and SATYAM, the people in Gaza, all of the links were just now shared again by Kaisa. Thank you, Kaisa. So yes, Mu'in Habibi, go on, please.
Maya حبيبتي مساء الخير.
Mm, mm,
Hello everybody. I would like to thank Mr. Amos for this speech, which is wonderful. And I'm so happy to listen to you as a Palestinian from Gaza. And I am so happy also that Israelis and Jewish around the world listen to this. Um, I just want to say about, the cause for arriving to where we are now, anti-Semitic or anti-Zionist or anything that we can use it as a cause. I think where we are now, it's bigger than this cause. As I am from Gaza, of course, I cannot support what's happened in the 7th of October as a human being, because this is not acceptable at all. But also, I cannot accept what's happened and what's happening for the Palestinians since 1948 until now, because there is a lot of genocide happening, like Sabra Shatila, like many things happen for the Palestinians. And I also want to say about who is supporting Hamas to be in their position now. And for the Israelis, they know this. I am here in Europe and I have a lot of conversations with people And I can see the Europe people, they don't understand the situation and what's happening and what's happened before. And they just listen now about the 7th of October. But I just want to tell them that, yes, it's good now to open your eyes and to listen and to stop to support what is wrong, because you are supporting Israel, you are supporting this government, but now the Israelis are suffer a lot because of this support. The support is wrong. I met with a lot of friends from Germany. A lot of Germany people, they still feel guilty because of the Holocaust, and they feel that they have and they must support Israel because of the Holocaust, because they feel guilty. But your support now is really making the Israelis suffer, the making their life worse. Now we have to stop to talk about the cause. What's happening in Gaza as a human being is not acceptable. So we have to wake up for our humanity. This is what is important. It doesn't matter you are a Palestinian, you are Israelis, you are a German, you are French, you are whatever you are. What's happening now is against the humanity. And we have to wake up as a human being. We have, yeah, to say for what's happening. We have to stop this. We have to live with each other. We have to create. This is our responsibility. This is why we was born. We was born as a human being. We was born. We didn't. We wasn't born as an Israeli, as a Jewish, a Muslim, a Christian. We was born as a human being, and we have now to understand from our mistakes and learn from our mistakes to live with each other as a human being. Again, I would like to thank you, Maya. I don't want to take a lot of time. I would like to thank you, Mr. Ramos, for this wonderful speech. And I would like to thank everybody here and continue what Maya is doing. And yes, again, please, from Gaza, I just want to tell you that whatever we will do for the people in Gaza, we will do nothing for them. We will not back for them their fathers who did, their children who did. But I think the message from Gaza, from my family, from my mom now, who is suffering Gaza, who is living in Gaza, is telling to all of us that use their suffer to wake up our humanity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you so much, dear. Thank you for your heart. Thank you for staying open, though, with the genocide and the loss of many of your beloved ones, to still speak of love and hold peace and hold justice and freedom for everyone. This is exactly what we also wish to do here, to create here, naming everyone and acknowledging the genocide and acknowledging the Holocaust and acknowledging our need as humans for justice and freedom and equal rights for everyone. And to again, never again is also starts from here. It started yesterday and the day before yesterday. But again, never again on us, never again on Jewish, never again on Israelis, never again on Christians, never again on Europeans, never again on Americans, Native Americans, never again on many places that is now taking place. And for us to truly, truly remember that this is one of, again, the most honorable thing to now do, is to sit with our consciousness and to bring it and to acknowledge the truth in order to deeply, truly heal and to deeply, truly build a land from the river to the sea where everyone is free, where we, the Jewish, Israelis, and Palestinians, Arabs, Christians, Muslims, will actually hopefully become an example of how do we take the most catastrophic, the most painful into this, into freedom, into justice for everyone, into naming Aram that just a few minutes ago was throwing bubbles and is still on the camera with Kaisa, so that our children will play and have fun and go to dance and come back home and find not only food, but find their ways to their dreams, to their future, to their building, no matter who they are and no matter where we are. And I also would remind you to take care of yourselves. to really see, to also do self-empathy, to sit with self-empathy, to acknowledge that these are hard topics, these are hard conversations, these are touching our home and families and country and belonging. And still yet, only through the truth and us acknowledging each other can we actually create a real, not only Palestine, Israeli, global, really global liberation, because we are not only, Israel is not the only occupation in the world. Systematic oppression and weapon industry, separation and racism is the oppression that we are against. We are not against each other, and we shall never be against each other. In the contrary, let's continue to say we name everyone and we stand with everyone, exactly what Dr. Amos also wrote. We acknowledge the true and the history and we sit with it and we learn it in order to remember, in order to learn not to do it again, to learn not
Take
to.
responsibility.
Yes, yes.
And I wish to just add, I've listened carefully as I was landing in Berlin, and I also want to give so much gratitude for Amos, for you to come on and give us like a way to use language connected with heart and with consciousness, with history. And I just want to, because we didn't have a breakout rooms, I just want to encourage everyone to really take some time to integrate this conversation, wherever it touches you, wherever it challenges you, wherever it breaks you. And really wanting to invite everyone to send this to one or two people. I have these conversations in Israel all the time where there's so much layers of justification. And how do we meet with compassion and clarity? So if you're German or American or Jewish, doesn't matter, to send it to a friend, to listen, and then after have conversation. So really wanting to encourage the integration of this dialogue and the continuation of this conversation. I think it's so crucial for us to find our pathway to stand with humanity, truly, 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 in an embodied way. So yeah, just wanted to leave you with that.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Dr. Amos. Thank you, everyone. Dr. It's just such an honor again and again that we are able to be together as Jewish, as Palestinians, as humans, just to sit here and to talk and to have this space. And to remind you, we are also here for you. We are here every day from Sunday until also to Thursday on these Zooms from 8 to 9:30. But also we are here differently. We can meet you, we can be with you. We can come together also for you if it's needed. So please write to us, write on the groups or send an email. And as David said, please self-care. And again, thank you, Dr. Amos. It's an honor. And Kaisa and Yomi for holding the Zoom with us and for everyone that came. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for listening. And thank you, Moin, for your very precious words also. And I hope I didn't offend anybody.
Thank you. The contrary, it's been an honor to all of us, dear, to bring all of this. Thank you. And Amita, dear, thank you so much for naming what also needs to be named, to say the complete truth as it is. Yes, there is a criticism. Yes, there is pain that is following as I began this Zoom about my friend in Italy. It's not written in our forehead, but we can speak for each other and stand for each other. Thank you. And thank you all for the ones who are writing on the chats. We read you and we see you and we honor you and we are together with you. And we encourage you to go to the links, to go to the map and name yourself there. Join the groups, spread the word, go to your media, talk about it, tag us, hashtag us. Let's find every way to stand together, to be in togetherness for everyone, the people in Gaza and the hostages, the West Bank, Jewish, Palestinians, humans of all earth. Thank you. Thank you all, Christopher, Julia, Layana, all the ones, Carla, Ipti, thank you, Myra, everyone. And we'll see you again tomorrow, inshallah. Thank you. Blessings to all of you.